by video conference. Please direct your attention to Selectman Ryan for the Pledge of Allegiance. Larry, can you lead us in the pledge?
I do, but I do not have a flag with me. I'm on the road here, so I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at www.youtube.com/WRPS Rockland. Please go to www.wrpsrockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, community announcements. Doug.
I don't have, you know what, I guess I'll make this as a community announcement. I'll talk about it more during the town administrator report, but I will, just keeping it brief, explain that the town had a very successful COVID-19 test kit distribution on Saturday, the 12th. And I want to thank the fire department, the police department, and our community emergency response team for their efforts in that. And the announcement for tonight is that we do have quite a few tests left over, and they are available to Rockland residents for free. They can come to Town Hall, either to the Town Administrator, Board of Selectmen's office, or to the Board of Health's office. In addition, they can go to the Senior Center or the Mckinley Community Center during our regular hours. And at Town Hall, we're open till 8 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday night, which is tonight. So more information will be coming out shortly, but I figured I'd mention that as a community announcement. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, review of minutes and approval of minutes of February 1st, 2022. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
and myself. That's unanimous. Next on the agenda, new business appointments. Open Space Committee, Carl J. Ryan. I'll entertain a motion to appoint.
motion to appoint.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes,
and Vice Chairman Ryan, Nyman.
Yes.
All to have it. Thank you, Kara, and myself. Also, another appointment for Historical Commission, Thomas Regan. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I got a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
2 seconds. Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes,
and Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
and myself. Okay, next on the agenda, marijuana dispensary host community agreement.
Mike, could I-
Robert Lowry, Old Exit 14 Corp., 1015 Hingham Street. Doug.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to mention that Carl Ryan is on the Zoom. So, we can obviously say he's free to leave unless he wanted to, just make a brief comment. Carl, this is probably the easiest meeting you're ever going to have in your life. So, Mike, I don't want to step on your toes, but I just didn't.
I should say hello to us so we can see him.
Hi, yes, folks, thank you very much. I appreciate the nomination and the vote, and I hope to do the town well.
Believe you will.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. I didn't even notice. I didn't notice your picture up there on the screen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And feel free to hop off. You don't have to stick around for the rest of the meeting. All right, thanks, Mike. I'll go to the host community agreement then next. And just for clarification, is the iPad 2, is that Rob Lally that's listed as iPad 2 on the video?
No, that's David Mitchell.
Hi, David. Okay, so I don't see Rob yet. I thought he was going to be coming. Well, I'll just do my intro, and I know there are a number of other people from his team that are here. Oh, now Rob's on there. I see him. There we go. So here's my introduction, Mike. So as the board knows, we have 2 marijuana dispensaries that are up and running, open for business. There was a third, Cresco Labs, that was going to be located at 1015 Hingham Street, that had a host community agreement signed by the Board of Selectmen, and they had all their permits from the Zoning Board of Appeals. But they ran into a hurdle with the State Cannabis Control Commission because there's a limit on the number of licenses that any single entity can hold in the Commonwealth. And they were They were trying to get some kind of waiver or exemption from that from the Cannabis Control Commission, and they were not successful. So ultimately, they had to withdraw and pull out of that location at 1015 Hingham Street. So the Cresco did not own that site. They were a tenant. There was a different owner. And so, Rockland is an attractive market for dispensaries. And so it hasn't been too long. And now there's a new group. Mr. Rob Lally is here with other members of his team who I've been speaking with, and I worked with Attorney Galvin to negotiate our standard host community agreement, which I put in your packet. And I use those words carefully because we don't do negotiations sort of individually. We don't make it up depending on who the applicant is. We have a standard template that's been fully vetted, conforms to state law, does not try to squeeze any applicant for any kind of inappropriate funding. It's standard terms and conditions that we give to everyone. So we had a very quick and easy negotiation with Mr. Lally, and we have that final document, which is in your packet. My gut is telling me that this could be for him a relatively easy permitting path, since the Zoning Board of Appeals has already approved this exact use at this exact location. So it's all those types of issues, have already been discussed. So our normal process is I have those conversations first, work with Attorney Galvin. We present you with a clean host community agreement approved by our attorney. You can, interact with the applicant here, talk to them, and get any questions you have answered. I believe they have a short PowerPoint presentation if you feel it's necessary and you want to hear that. Then assuming if the board decides to approve that host community agreement tonight, then you would sign that document. Then they'd be able to take that document with them, apply for their special permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals, go for their local permits, and then their permits with the state, with the Cannabis Control Commission. So that's sort of the big picture. And then the other last point I would just make is the town does not have a limit on the number of dispensaries. That's a question that comes up sometimes. So there's no bylaw that the town meeting has adopted that limits it. I think at some point, the marketplace, I imagine, is going to decide that it's saturated, and I don't know how many more we'll be able to sustain. But obviously, Mr. Lally thinks there's enough of a market here to sustain 3. There's one other entity that has a signed host community agreement, Two Buds, which would be located right near Canavana, but they have not gotten off the ground yet, so I don't know that they will end up actually becoming operational. So maybe with that, Mike, we turn it over to Mr. Lally, unless you had any questions before we got started.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And obviously, we appreciate the work you put in talking to this group already. I just think, obviously, we don't just give out host community agreements. I'd like to get to know these guys just a little bit, and this would be the opportunity for you guys to present your company, present yourselves to the board, as well as the members of the community, so that we know who it is we're potentially going into business with. So with that, Mr. Lally, if you want to take the lead.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thanks for the introduction. And my name is Rob Lally. I'm joined here today with Greg Donahue, who is the other founding member of Old Exit 14 Inc., and our consultant, Yaswe Forrester Keys of Forrester Consulting. And, we did present, we do have a presentation for you that we can submit for the file. I think at this point, we might as well just kind of go through it. I think you've seen the site. So most of the site information, I think most people here are familiar with at 1015 Hingham Street. So we obviously think it's a great site. And I'll give you a little bit of our background. So first of all, Greg and I are cousins. Our family has long and deep roots in Rockland. We both spent time working for the family business at 14 Howard Street at both Tedeschi Realty, Tedeschi Food Shops, Store 24 in Little Beach. So Greg and I have obviously known each other our entire lives. I spent my early years in Rockland, and my grandfather raised his family in Rockland before moving to Norwell, where I spent most of my adult life. I said most of my life, actually. So we've been in the South Shore a long time. We have a lot of, we have a real deep feeling for Rockland. And I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to go forward with this project. Greg Yaswe and I have a long history in cannabis. So after I left Tedeschi Realty back in 2008, I went on to get involved in a very regulated environment as under a casino. I was part of a group that brought the first casino to the state of Maine. Again, very highly regulated. And when we sold that back in 2012, that's when I started focusing on other regulated environments like cannabis. And I've been working full-time in cannabis for the last 10 years. Very specifically, I started Cultivate Holdings, which was in Worcester County. We were one of the first medical licenses to be approved, vertically integrated with a dispensary, a production and a process, all in one location in Leicester, Massachusetts. You may have heard of Leicester, Massachusetts, because we were also the first to go adult use in the state of Massachusetts. And with that, we really kind of were very early on in the scene in Massachusetts cannabis. We have worked very closely with the regulators in Massachusetts from the very beginning, and we have great relationships with them. Greg was working with us as helping us with the vice president of sales and marketing in the company. He has extensive background in, obviously, he worked for Tedeschi Food Shops as part of their chief operating officer. He has retail experience. He's a lawyer by trade. He worked for retail after he left Tedeschi Food Shops once they were bought by 7-Eleven. He spent time at 7-Eleven. And then we brought him in to Cultivate to help us with our sales and marketing. And then Yaswe is a consultant. She has a legal background and knows the regulations better than anybody else. So the three of us bring an extensive amount of just, basic retail construction development and knowledge, but also years of cannabis experience. I myself also have licenses in the state of Las Vegas and Hawaii. So I have other interests in different states. And so I think when you start to get to know us, we have a real passion for Rockland. We have a huge experience in both retail and cannabis. And I would say we have more than just about anybody in the state. Last year, we sold Cultivate Holdings to Cresco. And I just want to make it clear, we have no affiliation with Cresco or with Cultivate Holdings anymore. This is after we were done with the sale, we found out they weren't moving forward with this, and we jumped on it because we really do think this is a perfect location, and we really want to be a good corporate citizen in Rockland. So as far as an introduction to us, I think that's who we are, and we're really here tonight to answer some of your questions and have you get to know us a little bit better. A couple of quick things. I mean, the site has already been through site plan approval. It already has been through the ZBA. Greg and I have gone through this many times. At Cultivate, I opened up 3 dispensaries. I permitted 240,000 square feet of production and processing. We built out 72,000 square feet of a pseudo greenhouse and state-of-the-art production facility in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. Our retail that Greg was responsible for once we built it was in Worcester, Leicester, and Framingham. We were the first to get into Framingham as well. And we have, like I said, I have operations in other states where we've done similar type of activities. This site, I think, is a very good location. We have reached out to the police department, and if we get approval from you tonight, we'll go forward as quick as we can with both the state permitting and with the local permitting. And we know there's a lot of work involved in that, but we've done it before. We know we can do it as well or better than anybody else in the state. And we really would like your support for the community host agreement. I think you are probably more familiar with the host agreement than we are, but we did work with the town administrator and the town's attorney. And it really was a very simple process because I think what Mr. Lapp said was right. It's already been agreed to, and we just really just changed some names and agreed to all, read and understood and agreed to all the points that were already in the host agreement. So, I think one thing that we've done that's unique that we like to touch on in any presentation is, security and compliance with the regulations. We know the regulations, we comply with the regulations, we have great relationships with the regulators. One of the groups that we have worked with from the beginning is a company called NetWatch. They're a security company. They started in Ireland, but then moved over here to the States. We were one of their first cannabis clients. But what's unique about them is they have a huge network operations center, which is manned 24/7, 365. And they have people watching the video real time, all the time. And they have a special software so that during our after hours or during any time when something is happening that shouldn't be happening, alarms will go off. So and we'll get contacted directly with a full report, including the video of what has happened. In a real live case that happened in Leicester early on was a couple of kids had come through the woods into the background, and they were just milling around in the back. And so the NetWatch facility, the NetWatch cameras have sound on them, and so they basically, in a very loud voice, ask them to identify themselves, let them know if they don't vacate the premise immediately that the police will be called. And sure enough, the police came, and there was no real incident there, but that type of level of security, I think, is essential and something that we would propose here as well. And I guess I'll kind of close in saying, we mentioned the police department in Leicester, Framingham. I think if you were to, and I would encourage anyone to reach out to them, because I think they would tell you not only, the work that I did at Cultivate, but myself being personally involved in it. I think they all would say it was a very good experience all the way through from the beginning to the end. And that's something that we would do here as well. And like I said, one of the first things we did was reach out to the police department in Rockland and Officer Zolotti, and we've talked to him and emailed him with our security plan already. So it is something that I think we want to make sure you understand that security is utmost a priority for us. We've agreed in the host agreement there will be no on-site consumption, whether it becomes legal or not. We've agreed to the payments that are prescribed in the host agreement. And, it says it in the host agreement, and I'll reiterate it here, is, we want to be a good corporate citizen. I think this is some place that Greg and our family have been for a long time, and we want to make it a better place. And that's why we're here tonight. So I guess with that, I will turn it over to the select board and see if there's questions that we can help you with to get to better know us.
Thank you, Mr. Lally. Any members of the board have any questions or concerns?
No, I'd just like to say welcome to the town of Rockland. I hope we all approve your license, and we have a great spot for you over there by the highway. And if I have my way, you'll be granted your license or whatever, your community host agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert and Greg, I do have, I guess, the question. Knowing where that building is, knowing the traffic on Hingham Street and the continued increase in the traffic and the congestion, I have no doubt that when you open, that it's going to drive a lot of vehicle traffic. So to that point, I'm not looking for specific plans on that, but obviously there's going to be a limited amount of space available within the parking. What is your plan there?
Sure, Mr. Penny, I can respond to that. And I've been through this a number of times. You may have seen me on TV when Leicester opened, and there was a mile long, it was something that none of us could ever have predicted. And it was very exciting. I think what was portrayed in the news was not, quite the reality of it. It was certainly a lot of people, and it was a lot for the town when it first opened. I will tell you, the very next day, we worked with the police department. We had meetings. We corrected all of the problems. And I can tell you that we haven't had a single traffic related issue that went on at Leicester or Framingham or Worcester. And so, first of all, we take traffic very seriously. We have hired Bob Michaud to do an updated traffic study, which is important. I've already had this conversation with the police department. So, so I'll talk about it from process and planning. So from a process perspective, we know that we're going to have to address that as part of the ZBA, and we will. We think we can do that. I know we can do that, I should say. And, we want a great experience for our customers. Our customers have a choice now. And what we found when we opened up Framingham, we thought we were going to have the same type of problem. It just isn't happening that way. The grand openings aren't as grand as they once were. And so the grand openings, people have to learn about where you are. We have limited places where we can market and let people know. So the openings are gradual. And I've seen that at a dozen dispensaries that have opened in the last 6 to 12 months. So I'm not concerned necessarily about the grand opening, if you will. I think over time, as people come to know us and know what kind of brand we are, we hope to attract more and more customers, which is, I think, a good thing. And but if it's not a good experience for our customers, then they'll go somewhere else. And so in that respect, one of the things that we saw during COVID that we worked a lot on was the online ordering and delivery system. So our initial orders, when we first started, customers would come in and it would be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for them to for a full transaction. What we found with online ordering, and as more and more of the customers became, aware of what we were doing, the order times as of, say a month or two ago, were in the 2 to 3 minute range, about 2 minutes and 32 seconds. And so that transaction really it's a much faster transaction. It's people know, once they get to know what you're doing and start to get online and then order from you, there is a flow that happens. And I do believe that if we find that the traffic congestion is too much, we'll either add more parking or we'll go to a delivery system or online ordering system rather, so that we will manage that traffic. And again, in my mind, we'll work with the police department closely, and we take traffic seriously. We're going to listen to what they propose, and we'll insert that into our management plan if it gets overwhelming. But we've seen more traffic than anyone. This site will be able to handle what we have right now with the spots that are there. I'm not concerned about that at this point in time.
Anybody else?
Mike, can I ask one question related to traffic?
Absolutely.
Are you going to have access to the traffic light at the intersection? Will you be able to directly get in and out through the light?
Yeah, so we have deeded access to that light as well as our primary entrance right on Hingham Street. So yes, we do already have that as a right of the lease.
Right, so I think that'll help traffic as well.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, comments?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank you for coming in front of the board tonight. I appreciate listening to your comments and learning more about your company.
Thank you.
All right. So, I think one of the things that's most important for me that kind of stood out in your presentation is the experience that comes with you guys, having been through this and actually haven't been the first to do it. So you got your growing pains out of the way at this point, and there's really not much at this point that you haven't seen, seeing as you guys, like you said, you were the first ones out there. For me, that's important when we enter into a host community agreement with a company, especially in this industry. I think it's important that you guys have your ducks in a row and you guys know what to expect and you guys are able to plan ahead of it, because I think it's one of those things that people have seen us enter these agreements in the past, and I think somewhat at times they think of us as doing it as somewhat haphazardly, and I feel pretty confident with the track record that you guys have presented, and some of the stuff I've looked into on my own, that you guys know what you guys are doing, and you guys will take all security measures, and you'll be a part of the community and protect the community's interests as well. So with that, I will entertain a motion from the board.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion to enter into a host community agreement with former Exit 14 Corporation. I have a second from Rich. All those in favor, Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes,
and myself. It's unanimous. Thank you, guys.
welcome aboard.
thanks.
Well,
Thank you all very
Thank you
much.
very
All the
much,
best.
Select Board,
Wish you the
for your
best.
time tonight. Mr. Lab, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Got it. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck. Okay, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I have none.
Okay. Next, old business, Union Point update, Southfield Redevelopment Authority Board of Directors, Chairman Tom Henderson, Rockland Representative Kelly O'Brien McKinnon, and David Rubin. Welcome, guys. It's been quite some time since we've seen you and had an update from you guys. I just thought this might be an appropriate meeting to kind of hear what's going on up at the former air base and give the residents an update. I think the last time we had talked, we didn't even have a master developer yet. So, hopefully you can give us some good news on that front. And I'll let you take it from here, Tom or Kelly, whoever's presenting, and I'm sure the board will have some questions for you.
Okay, excellent. Again, thank you, Mike, Chairman O'Laughlin. I appreciate it. With the rest of the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, thank you for taking the time and meeting with us. Again, as you said, Kelly O'Brien McKinnon, which is the Rockland representative, and then David Rubin, the Vice Chair of the SRA and is a resident. He's a joint appointee of Rockland and Weymouth, is joining us. So just to give you an overview, it has been some time. It's been a long road to get where we're at, but we're happy to report back in June, we executed an exclusive negotiation agreement with the prospective master developer. Why I call prospective is DNA just sets a path forward to get to a disposition and developer agreement, which will officially assign the master developer. But we were able to engage with BPD Union Point, which is comprised of Brookfield Properties, which is one of the largest developers in the country, in the world. New England Development, who has done a extensive amount of work in the Metro Boston area and all through New England. And then Green Companies, which is Tony Green, who has built Pine Hills, who has a great reputation on the South Shore. This is the A team of developers. It was great to get this ENA or exclusive negotiation agreement done because it limits any negotiations with any other developers. So it keeps us focused on working with BPD Union Point. It supplemented the SRA budget, which was a big concern of ours, of $95,000 a month. So that basically is almost our entire budget to keep 2 staff members and all the financial obligations rowing and moving in a direction to keep the project underway. It's also responsible for any of our Navy obligations. We still owe the Navy $7 to $7.5 million for the purchase of the property. So that is the prospective master developer will be making those payments as they move forward to a DDA. It creates a framework to start a master planning process and making sure a master plan is achievable for the development needs of the area in the South Shore. It sets the stage, as I said, for creating a disposition and development agreement. And then it also works with a community and stakeholder engagement. So we're going to hopefully very soon be reaching out to the stakeholders like each community, state legislators, and working out how we're going to get this project back on track and get it developed. And as all of you know, we've been faced with an insurmountable amount of issues that L-Star, the previous master developer, left us. And we're really taking this all down, tearing it all apart and starting all over, which I'll get into some of the things that we're working on. One of the biggest issues that we have is land consolidation. Currently, Washington Capital and BPD Union Point had reached an agreement to take the land, which is 339 acres of developable land, and worked out an agreement so that they can have the developable land ready to go as this moves forward. One of the issues is the open space land is owned by L-Star, and L-Star also owns several utilities, roads, and a pumping station that is failing on the site. So we're working as the SRA to figure out a way we can consolidate all that property and get it under the tent of the prospective master developer. There's a lot of roads to that. There's a lot of work to do that. We're continuing to work on, several ideas that hopefully, once we get there, we'll be able to update the board in a few months and when we get that finalized. One of the things that we had to do because of L-Star and the predicament they left us in, we put an attachment against their property, which it started out at $19 million as an attachment. We're awarded $10 million in attachment. L-Star failed to respond. It was a default judgment. We took it to Superior Court. We were awarded triple damages, legal fees, and interest for a total of $63 million. One of the largest awards in Dedham Superior Court history. It is kind of a paper tiger where the money does not exist at L-Star. If they did, they'd still be here as our master developer, but it means that they can't sell the property without getting these things resolved. In particular, the $63 million judgment that accrues 12% interest on a daily basis. So again, we've tried to put things in place to protect the development moving forward. So, you know, it's unfortunate that it happened, but the good thing is we're making sure that whatever we do, it's looking at the long term of the project. Some of the things we've done in the interim, though, we had even without a prospective master developers, we had a infrastructure bond that we refinanced. It was called the 2010A bond. This was originally at 7.75 interest, percent interest, and it was a $11.5 million bond. We were successfully able to refinance the bond to a rate of 3.18%. We were able to take the additional funds. We were able to essentially, like a house refi, withdraw funds without changing the lifetime or the term or the time of the bond. And we were able to take that $4 million that we were able to regain and put it back into infrastructure projects on the site. This was especially good while we didn't have a master developer or while we're in this phase of a prospective master developer. We've been able to do several projects, which I'll get into. We were also able to gain a Moody's Investors bond rating of Baa3, which was a significant task, is what I understand in the bond world. And it was interesting, we were able to do this without lack of a master developer. So it just proves the stability of the Southfield Redevelopment Authority that we could get a bond rating. So some of the projects that we plan or have done or plan on doing is, one of the things is this pump station that has been hanging over our head that we plan to repair on site with the bond funding. And then we have on Route 18, we were lucky enough to work with Mass DOT to upsize a pipe for the sewer, to get the sewer off site before a moratorium is placed on the roadway as they finished all their final paving. We need to install a secondary electric feed that L-Star just buried and never completed. So the residents of Southfield right now, or Union Point, if the power goes down on the single feed, it could leave them out of power for a significant amount of time. So we're going to add a secondary electric feed. And then we've demoed several buildings on the site that were just deemed unsafe in concern of just people, the public getting into and getting hurt. So one of the big things that hurdles, and shouldn't come as a surprise, is that infrastructure, water, sewer, and traffic. It's been one of the things that the SRA has made a main priority and communicated that to the prospective master developer, that, you know, we need infrastructure and we need some sort of plan to move this forward. You know, as they developed the property over the years, they did it kind of piecemealed with a little water here, a little sewer there, but it didn't give the big picture and give the big opportunity that the site possesses. But, you know, a lot of the things that exist with the site, and one of the main issues is the interbasin transfer districts. You know, Rockland and Abington sit in one, Weymouth sit in the other. So not one town can supply all the water and sewer for the entire development. So we have to look at regional approaches. We're working with the master developer team to figure out the best pathway to bring those and that infrastructure to the site. And there's no easy solution. I wish I could tell you there was a simple solution of run a pipe here, run a pipe there, and it's done. There's a lot of inner workings that have to go into figure out the best way and then figure out ways that we have to pay for it. So we're continuing to work on that. We successfully obtained a Mass Works grant for this last period for $270,000 for floodplain mapping. So we're going to be doing the floodplain mapping of the entire site. Our staff are continuing to work on that. And then just in general, we continue to work with the Navy on cleanup on the site. And then we've had a couple pieces of land that we've transferred over. So we continue to work on that. So that's just a general overview. I don't know if Kelly or Dave have anything to add to that synopsis.
No, I think you said it well. Thank you, Tom.
Nope, thank you.
Yeah, I'll open up to any questions or concerns from the members of the board. I think obviously, Tom, I think the main reason I wanted to have you guys on here is this project has been, ongoing for quite some time. I think I might have been in high school when this whole thing started, and that's I think almost 25 years ago. So it's been a while, and I think sometimes residents assume that maybe nothing is going on up there, and I know that you and Kelly have been working really hard, along with David as well, and everybody else that contributes up there, and that there's been a lot of obstacles. And I just thought it was important that you guys have an opportunity to present to the residents of the town and let them know what it is that you guys have been going through, and that you guys aren't just, sitting around in these, honorary positions, that you guys are actually, working diligently to try to get something developed up there. But obviously there's some obstacles, and I just think it's important that those obstacles be communicated to the residents whenever we can. So with that, any other members of the board comments? Rich, I think you just unmuted.
Yeah, just, just Tom, Kelly, David, thank you for the update. I know this is a thankless task that you have graciously jumped into. It is a big undertaking with a whole lot of obstacles. It is, we've talked in the past about the developers, and I do think the group that you have in place, I think the term, always, it's the A team, but truly, the developers that are now associated with this project truly have a very, very strong background and legacy of quality development. So, I do think we have the right developers in place, and up until just recently, that hasn't been the case. We all know, and you mentioned it, the biggest obstacles we face is infrastructure, and how do we solve that? And that's going to be the ultimate challenge. But thank you very much for the update. Very much appreciated.
Rich, thank you, and Mike on the comments, thank you, and it is greatly appreciated. And you're right, and I think we can always say A team, but they have the local experience, and they've proven themselves locally, and then to have a national or worldwide company that's backing and their vested interest, is very important to the project too. So it's I really do feel if anybody can pull this off and rebuild, as we keep on calling in the SRA world, Humpty Dumpty fell, and now the pieces have to be picked up. And if anybody can put it back together and put it back together better, it's this team. And I really truly feel that way.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to take the time to thank Tom and Kelly for doing a great job, and David also. I do hail back to the beginning and the first awkward steps we took toward developing this whole mess, and nobody could understand what the hell was going on then. It's somewhat better now, but we still have some issues to solve, and Tom and Kelly are doing a great job. One of the best things is not hearing about problems. And when you don't hear about problems, you know that the people that are doing the job are doing a good job at what they're doing, because we don't usually hear from you. So it's good to have you two here for the people of Rockland to see you and know that you're working in our best interests. And all I can say is I wish you the best. I'm not going to be around for much longer, but you guys are going to be in. If ever you need my help or anything, you just call me and I'll be there to assist whenever I can. I want to thank the two of you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Anybody else?
I would actually love to also thank you for the update. It was very thorough, and I'm looking forward to the possibilities that you presented tonight. So thank you very much.
So one of the things I guess I just, it might be too early in it, but we haven't seen, and maybe we saw it too soon from Elstar, but what is the current vision for the property specifically on the Rockland side? Has that been put together yet by the developers, or has that been communicated, or are they just in not even at that point yet?
They're not at that point, and because the big issue is, like I said, land consolidation, and also to understand the infrastructure. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. How much infrastructure do we need? So you have to have some concept, but how much infrastructure can you get? And that's the other part that will determine what the development looks like. And also a lot of economic factors have to be taken into account. There's a lot of changes since the COVID pandemic on how development is done, how workspace, commercial space is utilized and built out. So I think a lot of these larger companies have really gone back to the drawing board to figure out what can be sustainable, and that's what we strive for. What can be sustainable, and what is financially the best options for Rockland. And I do know the master developer is working on some of the financial strategic plan of potential build outs and figure out what's best for the long term. And that's what I like about their approach to this.
Okay. So I have no more questions, no more comments. If anybody else speak now or.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just got to say, as a joint appointee of both towns and a resident of Weymouth, I'm in a good position to say that just Rockland is just incredibly well represented on this board by Tom and Kelly, and you couldn't have two better choices. And I think with a little more patience, which is asking a lot, this is going to pay off in a big way for Rockland. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, that's certainly the hope, and having them in that position. And I think, like I said, it's been out there for a lot of years, and there's been a lot of different versions of what's going up there. I think Mall of America was supposed to go up there when that was still a thing, and I think at one point Gillette Stadium was going there. maybe even a casino or something. I don't know. There's been so many different things that have been going up there. It's just I don't know. I just every now and then I hear a rumor, and I'm like, no, that's like 17 years ago. That's long gone. So I figured just give you guys the opportunity to correct the record now, and just, David, I think you said it perfect. Patience is still required, as this is a long, complicated project. And I think, to your point, we have the right people in place to get this job done. And look forward to talking to you guys again with some good news.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right. So next on the agenda, sewer department update, interim superintendent update, and commissioner update. We got Dave Taylor and Chuck Hessian. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys juggling your schedules around to be with us. I know this is second or third time we've tried to have you guys on, and obviously, for reasons beyond anybody's control, we had to, table those times on the agenda. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dave, or Chuck, whichever one of you guys are going to present. We give you guys a couple of things that we wanted to kind of address. I'll go through them briefly. I&I capacity improvements made since the last meeting with the Board of Selectmen. Status of new development projects in town as it goes with sewer capacity. Sewer hookup moratorium status update. Review of recent sewer rate increase voted by the sewer commissioners, and status of sewer commissioners search project for a new superintendent. So with that, Dave.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm just gonna touch briefly. I'll start on the I&I capacity improvements on everything that we've started. Obviously, we had the SSES study done last year. That was done in the late evening hours that I supervised. What it was a $300,000 contract that was given out to AECom, who's done previous work in the town in the past. What they did is they did 90% inspections of the town infrastructure sewer lines. That included some of the lateral hookups into people's properties. So what it does is it actually went, to put it in layman's terms, went around, identified the high probability areas of inflow and infiltration, whether they be manholes or sewer lines. And what they did is they came up with a solution for those and then gave us an area where, what type of construction or rehabilitation, and then what would we be getting back for gallons per day on each one of those areas. So it was a big contract. It puts us a little bit in the forefront, when we get into development, to identify what we need to do, these high areas that have been identified. So it's a great spot for us to be in as far as identifying these areas of infrastructure that need rehab. So that's a major hurdle for the town that the commissioners passed. I believe, Chuck, what was that, a couple of years ago you guys voted on that, and then we got that done last year, and most of all the work has been done, and then they forwarded us all the results October of last year. So it gives us a good area to move forward with. Some of the other projects for I&I was obviously and I'm just going to go with these randomly in order as they were done. There's obviously the new elementary school project. I know Chuck and I touched base on this today. What it does is, obviously it's a newer school. You're going to be closing down the Jefferson School. So what they've done in the past is we've had some of the town drainage was actually tied into some of the, sewer manholes on those adjacent properties. So we'd be getting those gallons per day. You had drainage, floor drains, sump pumps, before it was DEP regulated or a Stormwater Act was passed, the town buildings were all tied into the sewer. So moving forward, obviously, sewer will be tied into sewer, drainage will be under the MS4 stormwater permit. So that would obviously alleviate any problems we have with that. So that would be a major hurdle, that'd be a plus from the school project. Also, some I&I work that was done would be, typical manhole risers. That's, again, to put it in layman's terms, it'd be any road project was, it was coincided with the sewer. What we did is we updated the new manholes. They had to be rehabbed, reconstructed, updated them with sealed manholes. And then you get DEP credits moving forward on what you would be getting. Small credits, it's 1,000 gallons, but that's 1,000 gallons spread over 365 days. So, but it's still something going back into the town. So if we replace 50 manhole structures, you'd be getting 50,000 gallons back. But again, that's spread out through the year. That's not per day. So again, a small item, but it had to be done anyways. And we've started to, meet the compliance as far as that. A couple areas, and these are some areas that Keith did when he was here. It was obviously Plain Street, West Water. We had an area there where there was a water main break. If anybody remembers that at an intersection, it was a little bit of a nightmare for probably 6 weeks. I think Kara could probably reiterate, and Mike, because you guys live down that way. So what we found out is the drainage was blown apart. So we had infiltrated into the town drainage. And then also the sewer manholes were taking in an ornate amount of water from that area. So those areas were cambered. We looked at different rehabs and we redid those areas over. So that was a large amount of gallons, brought back into in from the inflow and infiltration from just, that one area, that got brought back to the plant that you could see it. That plant said there was a blip down there when that was fixed. So additional, obviously water conservation through the water department. So that helps us on that aspect. And then also, I know a lot of people don't realize, but town of Abington has a small amount done, through that is run through the town of Rockland system. So they have to do a certain amount of projects and I work to meet the Rockland standards. They forward that over. That will be in the end of the year I report as far as, and then the end of the annual report from the sewer department. So those are just some I work that was done. Again, it's, unless you're doing camera work and inspection work or have flow meters, it's hard to, meet the certification on that, on what you actually got back. There are DEP credits. I know we're moving forward as far as the department, with flow meters and some problem areas we have with town, moving forward. So we're getting prices on that, as we speak. So that obviously would be a big plus side as far as that go. And then, and also, I know Chuck and I touched base on this. So we do have a lot of projects that were approved. So we actually, over the past year, so we haven't gotten those gallons back per project, whether it be like Lydia Square, few of them like the brewery. So none of those have actually come up and running. So we haven't seen, what kind of effect that will have on, the infrastructure or what we're going to see back at the plant at that point. So that's just, just a broad view of that. To touch base on the status of new development. So obviously right now we are under a moratorium. There are projects, in line that are pending approvals. And then there are projects that are actually on a wait list right now. And I know talking with Chuck today that we're looking at a way to do a partial lift on that as we would. It would be a small lift,
Dave, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
I just got a text message from a resident. Chris, you with us, Benika?
Yeah, this is Seth running this meeting, not Chris.
Okay, Seth. Yeah, I'm getting a message from a couple of residents now that our meeting's been breaking up for the past 15 minutes and nobody can understand it.
Okay, all right, I'll get that fixed right now.
Okay. Sorry, Dave, to interrupt. I just felt like you were getting to a point that I felt like some residents might have been tuning in specifically to hear. So.
Oh, all right. No problem. It's probably my running on sentences.
No, you were fine. I can hear it fine on the Zoom side. So I think it's something on the transmitting side, the streaming side.
All right. So, just to touch base on, obviously I know you have listed here as a bullet point status of new development. So obviously with the moratorium, there is a little bit of a waiting list right now. And I know Chuck and I had a conversation on that today moving forward. I know we're going to be in discussions of that over the next few months on some projects pending and projects that will be on a waiting list and projects that would probably fall off that have kind of been in lieu of any permitting process. So, as a commission and as a department, we're looking at every avenue, obviously, to bring in monies to the plant, via development, but we also want to do it right. Set forth a certain amount of I&I and have that equated to whatever type of development we have, and make sure we get that I&I back, per credits, and then doing it the right way.
So Dave, when you guys have a developer put in an application, and this is more for the residents, what is the exchange on I&I? What's the return? Is it 11-1? Is that what the typical app is?
That's DEP. That's a DEP standard, 11-1. So
you guys can ask for more, right?
That's correct. And that's what we could, we could obviously instill a value, let's just say per sample, 15-1 or 20-1, you know what I mean? So what we've talked about is, say we started out on a level item of 5,000 gallons. Say we had 3 projects and those equaled, up to 5,000 gallons. Once those projects, say it was a 15-1 ratio, we got all that back. Then once we got that 5,000 gallons plus back, then we would open that 5,000 gallons back up to the next person, in line. So, I mean, that's the way to do it. 5,000 gallons isn't a blip, but also we'd be getting some development in. And then also if let's just say per chance we did it a 21 ratio, we would be getting that back 20 times. So we would be in a good spot. Say those 3 developers, you'd have those 3 developers times 20, you'd be getting all that I&I work back. And again, I make reference to the SSES study. So we have those areas identified. We could say, listen, these are the areas where you're looking to do the development. These areas have been identified. This is what you have to do. Or we take the money. I mean, again, we're we're at the stage right now where we're in discussions, moving forward as a department and as a commission, on how we're actually going to handle that, obviously, and do it legally, in compliance, and meet, all the guidelines and regulations moving
Yeah,
forward.
I think that's probably a pretty decent policy, similar to the way we do the host community agreements that we just did earlier in this meeting. We have what it takes to operate in this town, and we don't move off of that. So, I think you guys, continue to do that going forward. And if a developer doesn't want to do what it takes to operate here, then they don't get permitted to operate here. So, I think you hold the line on that, and knowing what the infrastructure challenges you guys have, whatever amount you guys need for them to get back an INI, you guys set that rate, and don't definitely don't do it at the floor level,
Correct. I mean, that's the way, that's the way we're looking at it, is we're, we want to make sure if where we're at a moratorium, if we do a partial lift, that whatever we get back is going to be worthy of what we need to do for the town and the infrastructure upgrades that are necessary at this point. And obviously we need the developmental fees moving forward as a, Chuck brought up a good point today where, if we're collecting INI, that we literally put that in the INI account, and if when we got to do a larger project per INI, we have it there. Henceforth, the enterprise is fund and in stabilization fund. So, so obviously, we're in discussions now where there's a lot of revamping that we're doing, which again, we're trying to make the point that we're doing everything in compliancy. Obviously, we have a new NIPD's permit, going on right now. You're looking at plant upgrades, looking at infrastructure upgrades. So there's a lot going on. The rate study is out. Weston and Sampson's running with that. So we're on the preliminary with that. CWMP is the next stage, next phase for the, the plant. That will allow us, the CWMP, to get a low interest loan on design or 0% loan. So that's the next phase. It has to be done. That'll let us know where we need to be at that point. So obviously there's a lot going on at the plant. So.
Thank you, Dave. Chuck, any update on the search for new sewer superintendent?
Yeah, we've had 3 applicants so far. I'll be discussing them Thursday night, probably having 2 of them in to speak with. I want to piggyback a little bit on the moratorium with Dave. The key is going to be this new NIPD's permit. There's some pretty stringent things that it came in on. And one of the highlights that I want to mention to the board, so they're aware of it, that our annual flow is reported 1 million gallons a day. And our plant capacity is 2.5 million gallons. And under the new permit, what they've stated under the conditions, and I'm going to read it directly from the permit: if the average annual flow in the previous calendar year exceeds 80% of the facility's 2.5 million gallon design flow, which is 2 million gallons a day, or there have been capacity related overflows, we have to report it as a non-compliance. And where that'll catch us is in the new connections, because that plan calls for further potential flow increases, which are new connections. We have to describe how we're going to maintain the compliance with the flow limit and all other effluent limitations and conditions. Just to put that in perspective, last year at a 2.5 million gallon design flow, we exceeded every month, and our average for the year was 2.93 million gallons a day, which is 930,000 gallons over what they're asking for.
Is there any consideration, Chuck, given for the record amounts of rainfall that we had last year by anybody?
They can, every community in the state is dealing with that, but
yeah,
unfortunately, the way the EPA looks at it, it's what comes into your plant and what you discharge. That's all they care about. So they look at, by this new permit, it's not really by, if we hold the grounds, we're only 430,000 gallons a day over capacity. But we still have to report it and tell them how we're going to get down to no more than 80. And what I was telling you about when they went to the effluent limitations, one of the big kicker, and it's gonna really, really be a tough point for the town is phosphorus. Now, phosphorus, it's a double-edged sword with us. We only have to test for it between April and October of each year, and it is a tough parameter to deal with. Current permit is 2 micrograms per liter. By next year, we got to get down to 1. This year, we can effectively treat it with chemicals. It's a crapshoot. You can't do it consistently with chemicals. And the other end of that double-edged sword I was telling you about is that phosphorus generates an incredible amount of sludge. Last year, I think Rick was telling us they went up 17%. Excuse me, I got it down here, 18% in sludge last year. And the disposal alone of it went up 17%. And we only have one place that'll take it right now. Industry analysts have predicted that disposal costs and treatment costs are going to go up 35% this year. So it's going to be a cost to that. But what they did with the phosphorus is they broke it down into, they've given us 3 years to technically come into compliance. Year 1 is that, again, I'm going to read it right from the permit. The permittee shall submit to the EPA and Mass DEP a status report evaluating potential treatment process changes, chemical addition, mechanical. This is going to have to be done mechanically. The first year, 2022, our costs were covered because we had money going into our, I forget one of those funds, because we had a surplus from the CWMP. Year 2 is where it's going to hurt. Again, my prediction, my guess, and I'm pretty well on with it, is that we're going to have to do mechanical means. Now, that's going to be a tertiary treatment system, which probably is going to require a separate building unless we can find room. And my guess, the cost to comply with that is going to be in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. That's for year 2.
So Chuck, can I ask you really quickly? Obviously, we're in the budget season, and these are capital expenses. Have you gone before capital planning? Is this part of the capital plan at this time?
What I'm going to do is I'll be bringing that up Thursday. I've written a couple articles that I want to go over with Dave and the board about going to them for this. Again, the tough part, Mike, of this one is that, again, you can only check for phosphorus between April and October, which means that has to be up in operation by next April.
Yep.
And it's going to take some real serious investigation. We're looking at now that, again, I got all the faith in the world in Suez treating it chemically, but you can't do it consistently. To expect to meet that 0.1 is out of control. It's just not possible. So we're going to have to look to get a scope of work done. And I think Dave is talking about Weston Sampson, putting together a scope of work to go out to bid for this to see what we can do on that.
So Chuck, typically when the sewer department puts together, articles for the town meeting warrant, most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time anyway, it comes from sewer receipts. You guys have funds available to cover any of this, or will you be asking for outside money? Okay, ARPA money or anything?
Like I said, this is going to capital planning was new to me. I brought it up to Dave. I've talked with
Rich.
No, I talked to Humphreys, Mr. Humphreys.
From finance. Yep.
He set me up with a call. I got to talk to a Rich Harris, I believe.
Harris, yep.
Okay, that's who I'm going to go to. But anyway, that's where it is. And I'd like to really, if you guys can tune in Thursday night to our meeting, I want to go in a little more depth on this NIPD's permit. But what I want to do is piggyback on to what Dave said about a moratorium. I really didn't want to do that. I want you guys to realize that I knew the EPA was looking at us, and I'd rather strike first. So we put out that moratorium to show that we're trying to be proactive to avoid a consent order, which worked. But as Dave said, we've got permits out there that have already been approved for the tune of 34,700 gallons a day. Now, if you put that into the 1101, that's 382,000. But that's flow that hasn't even hit the facility yet. These are people, what I'm trying to do is, I want to look at an intelligent way we can grant permits to people that we've already approved permits to that have broken the ground, so we're not shafting them if to put it up one term. But it's, I've asked the guys on the board to put their heads together, come up this Thursday with some preliminary ideas. Dave and I have talked. And again, if we do release it, it's going to be a minimum. I just don't see any way out of it. And if we looked at what's projected, we're going to have a waiting list. You know, that's a bearer of bad news.
Chuck, it is what it is. I mean, you're presenting facts, you know, so, you know, I don't think anybody here has any question about the moratorium and the reasons for doing so. But if we're at a point where some capacity exists and small things can get in that have already been started and approved, then, you know, you do it in that phase, right? And, you know, I think the biggest thing for you guys and, you know, Chuck, obviously, you know, you don't have to, you don't answer to the Board of Selectmen per se, but, you know, just, you know, from an advice from a procedural standpoint, just make sure that when you do meet with capital planning and you do meet with the finance committee, that you put the stuff out there, put the information out there for them so that they're not surprised. Because I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, for us over the last year, it's been brought up that, you know, asking how we didn't necessarily know. And a lot of times we draw our information off of what we see off the capital plan. And if there's something that's not on there, then, you know, I mean, we're not mind readers. We hear rumors out there. We have conversations with people, but until, you know, the commissioners or the committee that's in charge of that department puts something on the capital plan, there's no way for us to forecast when the need is there. So definitely everything. Don't leave any stone unturned on that.
No, I'm not. Believe me, Mike, I have been digging. I'm trying to research grants as well. I mean, I don't want to say it, if I had a soul, I'd sell it for money, but I'm trying to do everything. I can think of everything we can to bring that up to speed. And again, I'm not trying to be the Grinch or the bearer of bad news. We still have that albatross over our head of an aging facility.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna be as open as I can. I've written the articles. Again, I've never done this before. I want to show them to Dave and the board Thursday night, get their opinion, how to tweak it. And I want to give, without being too wordy, give capital plan all the information they need to make an intelligent decision. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. But we still got to comply with that permit. It's no different than a drinking water permit.
Absolutely. So Chuck, I'm just gonna ask Doug briefly to speak on the process as far as the financial, what financial monies might be available to the sewer department at this time.
Right. Thanks, Mike. I just want to be clear that, you know, the sewer department, like the water department, they've always operated as an enterprise. Even before we voted them as formal enterprise funds at town meeting, all that did was really clean up the accounting to reflect the practice that had already been in place. So sewer revenues have to pay for sewer expenses, just like they always have. And sewer articles have always paid for, sewer revenues have always paid for sewer articles. So I went over this with the town accountant before she recently left with Biz, and she shared the numbers with me, and I've been discussing it with Serena as well. And the bottom line is the sewer department does not have sewer revenues to pay for any of these articles that Mr. Hessian is talking about. So, I mean, that's just the simple fact. And, you know, and I have the Munis reports in front of me that there is an undesignated balance at the end, but historically they needed that just to cover their operating budget, to cover shortfalls. They did do the right thing recently, a very difficult thing, and raise their rates, raise their fees to more accurately reflect the expenses they have. But that's really just helping them essentially balance their operating budget. So I don't, you know, I recognize Chuck doesn't want to be the Grinch, and no one wants to be the Grinch, and I certainly don't either. But I don't believe they have revenues sufficient to cover. I think it's to cover the articles. I think it's important that Mr. Hessian goes before capital planning to put them on the capital plan, because there's lots of things on the capital plan that we need that we don't have funding yet. And then when we get funding available, then we do it. But I just want to be clear that I'm going to be presenting my budget presentation later tonight. And I have fully programmed out all of our free cash on all of the various, requests that we have, and they do not include sewer items because those should come from sewer revenues, just like the water items come from water revenues.
So, so on that also, so just to be, straightforward, so what we have for capital planning on sewer right now, so originally we had the digester boiler, which was put together to do the digester boiler upgrade. So what we did is we had some leftover article funding. So before Elizabeth left, what we did is we had that going with digester boiler. We had an opera fund, obviously meeting, Doug, Jen, Elizabeth, myself, and Joe Lapointe. And what we've done is we're going for the ARPA funds to help do that digester boiler. So what's going to happen is that is going to make the article monies available for us to use elsewhere, which is where we put in for capital plannings and articles for year one that will cover us for the NIPD's permit for fiscal 2023.
That works. I'm good
Right.
with that. Yes, I'm fine with that.
And again, that would be working off of what we have at sewer receipts this year. Right now, we also have enough out of the O&M budget, for the increases of the chemicals for moving forward for what the upgrades are going to have to do to chemically enhance for the NIPD's permit till July. And then from July on, also, we'll have enough in the budget, the operating budget. And then keep in mind, once we have a partial moratorium lifted, you'll have developmental fees moving forward. And then hopefully we're in a better situation next year when we go and present for capital planning. Capital planning is aware that we have upgrades to be met, NIPD's permits to be met moving forth for the next few years. So there'll be at least $500,000, like Chuck made reference to, at least $500,000 for the next few years moving forward. And then hopefully with the developmental fees and then also keep in mind with the rate study, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news for the rate study, but the new rate study is going to incorporate what we have for obviously plant upgrades, infrastructure upgrades. So it's not something like, hey, you know what, Abington just went up $1, let's go up $1. It's going to be, looking at every single avenue and what we have moving forth. And then hopefully we're in a better situation moving forward for fiscally 2024. And again, Chuck made reference to what we made a decision where we would hire a engineering company to help us with the NIPD's permit just to oversee it. Suez is on board where I think we can save, a lot of money with their engineers. And what Weston and Sampson is just going to give us a timeline on what we need to meet and the timeline for that NIPD's permit moving forward. Again, Chuck made a valid point where obviously the DEP and the EPA, are watching every move that everybody's making right now. And as long as we're amicable and we're moving forward in the right direction, I don't see any, problems moving forward. But again, capital plan is aware of, obviously we're in an area where we're going to have to be working off our receipts, but hopefully fiscally we'll be in a better shape than we are this year. Again, Doug made reference to the dollar rate hike, and then also the base rate went up, and that was just literally to cover our general budget, just to get us to the plus side, or else we would have been robbing Peter to pay Paul just to make ends meet over there this year. So I think we're moving in the right direction down there right now. So.
And Mike, could I just say real quick, I promise I'll be very brief, just that I agree with what Dave said, which is we did commit to pursuing a roughly $500,000 ARPA application for the digester boiler. And there were prior funds appropriated to help with that, which are not sufficient. So I agree with Dave, if we can reappropriate those funds for what they need, those funds have already been allocated. What I was expressing earlier was just, new, entirely new projects outside of existing funding. So thanks.
Moving forward.
One more thing I want to piggyback on Dave. He hit something really key there. And I can tell you from very painful experiences with the EPA in court, that as long as you demonstrate continuous improvement and an earnest effort, they will work with you. What you don't do with them, and again, this is from pain of a learning curve, is when you talk the talk, you walk the walk with them. And they will work with you. They're not in the business to find people. They're in the business to keep you in compliance. As long as you are making, a continuous effort to do so, they will work with you.
Yeah, Chuck, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just continue to communicate with them, and if you guys, come up short, put it out there and let them help you, let them coach you along and go from there. But you're right, don't, put the information out there and let them know what's going on so that we don't find ourselves in trouble for anything else, With that being said, I'll open it up. Any questions or comments from the other members of the board?
I don't have any questions. No, go ahead.
I don't have any
Sure.
questions. I just want to thank Dave and Chuck for coming on tonight. Provide a very thorough update. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Okay, Rich, you had a question?
No, I didn't. I just want to say thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
We just started breaking up again, so just a heads up, Mike.
All right. So, hey, Chuck, real quick, Dave, I think obviously you guys are well aware. I don't have to tell you that you guys got a lot of work down there, and that it's going to be a challenge. I think you have the support of the board. Anything you guys need and any questions, even Chuck. Like I said, I've always extended myself to you if you have any questions for procedural purposes. Anything as far as working with some of the other boards and committees, what you have to go through. By all means, feel free to reach out to me. And I'll help you along. I think you guys have done a good job. I think continue to communicate to the residents everything that you guys are going through, and we'll get through it together. I think So you guys, sounds like you guys have a plan similar to the way you were talking about working with the EPA. Keep us informed. Let us know what the plan is, so that we can work along with you guys, and we can have the same message coming out of town hall and from the sewer plant.
Will do. But I would like to throw one more kudo out there. And especially to the residents that are listening. Rockland is in a very lucky position that we've got contract operators like Suez. I've been in this business over 40 years, and I'll tell you, what they do with that old equipment is nothing less than amazing. They are a good crew. We're in good hands with them.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen. Dave, I'm going to ask you to hold on for 1 second. I'm going to go to a quick agenda item just before you, and I'm going to go back to you for unanticipated new business. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So next on the agenda, Billboard Host Community Agreement, WN Realty LLC, State and Local Permit Extension. Doug.
Sure, I'm going to handle this quickly, Mike. I told the applicant they don't need to be here. As the board knows, we have a host community agreement that the board signed for a billboard in our sign overlay district. Because we had a potential concern that they might have some problems getting state permits, we had some very tight and strict timelines in the host community agreement, so that if they're not able to get all their permits, then we can essentially cut them loose and move on to other potential opportunities. The first timeline they had to meet was to fully apply for all their state and local permits within 90 days. And due to a couple things that were outside of their control, people getting sick, some confusion about some of the deadlines to get onto the ZBA, they were concerned about meeting that timeline. So I spoke with them. I spoke with Attorney Galvin. Based on what happened, we're comfortable with recommending a 45-day extension. That would just be a one-time 45-day extension for them to fully apply for those permits. And then after that, there's other timelines where they have 3-month and 6-month timelines to actually achieve the permit. So what we're asking is 45-day extension to apply for all their state and local permits. They actually only asked for 30, but I think an extra 15 days just to give them a little bit of cushion so there's no issues.
Okay, that makes sense. And this is the company that we kind of wanted, just for the fact how the location of the billboard and how it wasn't obtrusive to the residents. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 45-day extension.
Make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. I was getting nervous. So I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
and myself. Okay. So I'm going to skip over your budget presentation, Doug, and I'm just going to go to other new business, not anticipated. We got lucky enough to now have Highway Superintendent Dave Taylor here with us.
Switch
Dave?
my hat.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm not sure where you want me to go. Obviously, we've had 40 inches of precipitation in the last few weeks, so I can't say enough about our crews. I mean, we have great crew leaders down here. We got a great staff inside. I thought they've handled every storm great. I mean, obviously, you got crews that care about, the finished products, and that you can see that by, how they handle each storm. So I thought this last storm and the ice storm were harder than the blizzard. So, it was just messy out there. So.
I think you guys are becoming somewhat of a victim of your own success. You guys, every storm, you guys have the best roads. We have the best roads around, and then if there's any kind of a slight hiccup, something to the effect of 35 inches of snow or 30 inches of snow, whatever it might be, and no place to put it, people are like, oh, I can't see around the corner. Oh, give them a day. Give them 5 minutes. And I think the expectation, you guys have raised the bar so high for the residents that they just expect the roads to be down to blacktop, and 99% of the time you guys get there. So keep it up. Anybody else have any comments? I know Dave wants to go watch the Super Bowl. He hasn't been able to watch it yet. So
I'll probably watch it tomorrow night now. So
sorry. Sorry.
So
don't tell them who won.
No, I know who won it. I walked in on the end of the game.
So Mike, to your point, I think people have unrealistic expectations and have no idea what actually takes place to clean the roads and the sidewalks and get it out. So with that, for the few that want to complain, grab a shovel and help. Other than that, quiet time. Dave, honestly, as you go from town to town, it's amazing. It is something that you can physically see and actually physically feel in your vehicle. As you drive out of Rockland and go to any other town, it is, you don't have to see the entering or exiting of the town. From the road. And I think that more than anything, just epitomizes what that crew does. And to your point, they own it, man. They do a tremendous job. So just hats off. So thank you.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of coordination down here, with the staff, and then, like I said, you can't do it without guys caring. So obviously our guys care about the product at the very end. So but I appreciate them. So
awesome. If anybody else has any comments, if not, I'll let Dave go.
I would bet the boys who plow with you aren't going to do any less than you're going to do, Dave. And that's the beauty of having you out on the road, because they know that they have to do as good as you do. And you do a great job. And I want to thank you and your complete team for the great job that's been done over the years. Rockland's always had a history of good roads. Way back in the glory days, I plowed a couple of years, or at least 1 year for the town. So I know what it's all about. Anyway, thanks a million.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, Dave. Thank you much. We'll let you go.
All right. Thanks.
Dave.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
All right, next on the agenda, FY23 budget presentation and discussion. Doug.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm going to try to share my screen if you'll bear with me for one moment. Okay, can you see the full screen? Yeah, okay. So I want to give a overview and presentation of the town budget. Work closely with the town accountant before she left, and I've been working closely with the assistant town accountant, Serena Amaral. And I just really want to thank her for stepping up so much. This is going to be very different this year, what I'm proposing. The last few years, really since I've been here, we've been in really tight budget situations, real revenue constraints, and we've had to really work hard just to keep status quo. And we got some good news with the governor's proposed budget with our preliminary cherry sheet numbers. So for the first time since I've been here, I'm looking to propose making inroads in a number of key areas. So I just want to prepare you for that this is a different budget presentation. I'm looking to add in a number of key areas, which I'm going to highlight one by one. And I'm certainly welcome to hear any feedback you might have in direction, especially as I have the another finance committee meeting tomorrow night. So to start, I thought I would highlight again the financial dashboard, which I started earlier. I won't read every single number, but I will say that while our average single-family tax bill has gone up considerably due to the school building project that voters approved, we still are, below the statewide average single-family tax bill, if that's any consolation. You can see our reserve fund balance is still pretty good. Our certified free cash number, which Biz went through at a prior meeting. I won't go through the details again, but we obviously got a very unusually high number, which is going to be very helpful this year. The rest, you've pretty much seen before. I think the main update to this was really free cash, reserve fund balance, and our tax bill. Maybe one thing to note is I had this uncertain to unfavorable rating previously for our state aid as a percentage of total budget. And I think I haven't really changed it yet, even though we did get good news with the state budget this year and with Chapter 70. But I think what it kind of shows is, this 21-22% is relatively high. So you sort of live by the sword and die by the sword. And, when we do well with the state budget, we do well locally. But when it's hard times with the state, we suffer harder than most other towns. So it's something we sort of knew before, but the last 2 years compared to this year really kind of proves that point. So some of the budget objectives that I'm trying to achieve this year. The first is to discontinue the use of one-time funds, which we have been, forced to do in the last year or so, really just because of COVID and the unprecedented hit that took to our revenues. And we knew that we were doing something that was unusual, but we had to do it to keep services rolling. And we made a commitment to ourselves and to residents and taxpayers that we were going to pay back those use of one-time funds, and we're going to do that in this budget. Also want to try to make some inroads in needed staffing areas. And one of the more important things we're doing is the town had previously negotiated in one of our unions, the Clerical union, that we would do a professional wage and classification study to really analyze all the work and all the employees in that Clerical union and look at all the comparable cities and towns that are near us in our region to see if they're appropriately being compensated for that work compared to our neighboring towns. And it did show in some instances where we were okay, and in other areas we're short, and positions need to be shifted to different grade levels. And so that's something that, in my opinion, is really a top priority that we've committed to implementing those results, and we should do it in this budget. Regarding some of our revenues, our South Shore VOTEC assessment came in with only a modest increase, so that's really good news. Our health insurance premium increase was only 4.5%, which, this kind of shows how hard municipal finance is, because we're saddled with Prop 2.5. Our revenues can only go up by, that we generate from taxes can only go up by 2.5% plus new growth each year. And yet I'm happy about a 4.5% increase on our premiums with health insurance, which is one of our largest budgets. I mean, that right there shows a bit of a structural deficit, but the 4.5% is a lot better than what we were fearing. We had a 0% increase last year, and I think everyone was concerned there was going to be a big rebound effect with a lot more healthcare projected into our premiums, but 4.5% coming off a year of 0 is really outstanding. And then the governor's budget and our preliminary cherry sheet numbers, the net, there's revenues and there's the assessments. The net is very positive, and a big part of that positive number was over 1.5 million increase in Chapter 70. So that was really huge for us this year. So with our initial revenue projections, both things that we project on our own, like local receipts, as well as with the revenues from the governor's budget. We're looking at a little over $3 million that's available for the 70-30 split for the town. And you can see the numbers here, a little over 2 million for the school and a little under $1 million on the town side. I thought I'd just show two quick pie charts, which I'll probably do every year. And this just shows our sources of revenue, where our money comes from. And this split is, pretty similar to most of our other towns that are similar to us, over half coming from property taxes. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're a little more reliant on state aid than some other communities. So you can see 27% is a very large percentage. Then you have, local receipts and debt exclusions. And then our expense categories, this is definitely similar to other communities. You'll notice, the largest single expense category is education. And I want to be clear, I did put a note in there that this number and this percent is not just the Rockland Public Schools, but it also includes the South Shore VOTAC and the agricultural schools and transportation as well. But so education on its own, without factoring in the other education related expenses like health insurance for the school department and other types of related things, just in and of itself, that's 42%. And then you can see the other categories. The big ones are obviously our benefits and public safety are really the two other largest expense categories. So I think it's just helpful to see where our money comes from and where it goes. So as far as a budget overview, process-wise, I mentioned this earlier, we did go through the process of having each department head give us a budget request. And unlike prior years, we did ask them to put in requests for things that they've needed for a long time, but haven't had the opportunity to ask for or get. So we got a lot of requests for additional funding in budgets and also for additional personnel. So that was important to have that. And we personally met with each and every department head to go over their requests. On the salary side, all of our unions contracts are expiring June 30th. And as the board knows, because this is at your direction since I've started, virtually all of our non-union staff have migrated away from individual employment contracts and are now at-will employees. So this last bullet on the bottom, this is really the key thing, and it's unusual, certainly in my time here the last few years and probably going back many years before that. But I'm presenting you tonight with a potential 11% increase in our operating budget. And again, it's targeted in specific areas to make some inroads, which I'll go over in more detail. The last summary comment is, as I had to do last year, since we don't have any of the union contracts negotiated yet, rather than try to predict exactly what that's going to be in each union contract and for each employee, I've estimated a dollar amount, one single dollar amount called wage adjustment obligations, which is going to be in the Board of Selectmen budget, which I'm hoping will be sufficient to be able to cover what is ultimately negotiated with all the union contracts and also for non-union raises as well. A sub bullet I did put in here is that since I've been in Rockland, I've been putting in and treating elected department heads the same as non-elected department heads, meaning whatever standard raises department heads get, I've included the elected department heads in there. I know there's been some questions that have been raised to me in the past about whether that's really the right thing to do and whether when an elected department head gets elected, they're elected at the salary at that time and that is supposed to be frozen for the whole 3 years of their term. So I put that as a question mark. That's something maybe we can just bookmark for discussion later to see if you have different direction for that. But again, I have been and in this budget treating them the same as other department heads. The only thing that makes them different is because they're elected. I can't handle the money the same way, which I tried to do last year. I had that wage adjustment obligation account. Once we settled the contracts and I knew what I was doing for non-union personnel, then we allocated it accordingly. But because elected department heads are elected, only town meeting can set their compensation. So their raises had to wait until a subsequent special town meeting. So I don't think that's really fair to them, assuming that they're going to get these raises. So for those, I think it's whatever it is, 3 or 4 elected department heads, I am going to estimate a number for the town meeting warrant, so they don't have to wait until a potential special town meeting, which is yet to be even scheduled. So that's all the background. Getting into the details of the budget requests and the highlights of the more significant budget changes. The first is the clerical wage and classification update, which I mentioned before. We estimate that to be approximately $36,000 impact across the whole unit. In the tax collector's office, they used to be fully staffed at 3 full-time people. When we had to make all those big budget cuts during the COVID revenue deficit, one of their positions was dropped from full-time to part-time. And that never has been restored since then. So that's bringing that from part-time back to full-time is included in this budget. We're pulling the HR function out of the town administrator's budget, in the Board of Selectmen's budget, and transferring that into its own new personnel department. So that move in and of itself doesn't cost any money. It's just taking it out of one place, putting it in its own department. But what is going to cost new money is, you see, we have $25,000 programmed in for a new part-time HR coordinator. So that would be a part-time position that would report to the HR director and would help with the ever increasing amount of work and just sheer volume of work that our one-person HR department is currently facing. Next are some pretty significant increases in the IT budget. This is not staff related. This is all related to different contracts and services which are required to be outsourced, and we're essentially at the mercy of the vendors, even when we go through state contract and get the benefit of the most, high volume procurement that you can get. The market for some of these contracts and services is increasing significantly, and especially as we look to do more things electronically, do more things online more efficiently, and also look to increase our security profile. Those have increased costs. One of the biggest ones I've been talking about for a while now, and I've been beating the drum, is for a town planner. So in this budget, I'm proposing to add a new position, a new town planner. We've plugged in $80,000. We think that's a reasonable amount. As I talked at a prior meeting, when I think it was Larry that asked about it, you can spend anywhere from $75,000 probably up to $150,000, depending on the person and the scope of work and the volume of work, et cetera. But I think for a community like Rockland, $80,000 is reasonable. Now, I have not banked or captured any savings, but I do believe that we will see savings in our legal services budget, because what Rockland is forced to do, because we don't have a planner, but we have to pay our land use attorney to come to essentially every zoning board of appeals meeting. And he provides excellent advice. But frankly, I believe that if we do get a planner, a full-time planner on board, that person would be going to those meetings. And occasionally our attorney would need to come, but certainly would not need to come to every meeting. And our planner would be salaried, and we wouldn't have that much higher hourly expense of paying an attorney to attend all those meetings. So I haven't counted on those savings, but I do think some will materialize. Another item in that land use department would be increasing the part-time land use coordinator, who we recently added a year or two ago, up to full-time. And again, as the board sees, with the volume of things that are going before all of the regulatory boards, and especially the zoning board of appeals, the work is there for both of these positions to be full-time. As the board knows, we received a regional dispatch grant, and we're anticipating that we're going to get that full grant again next year. I'm not counting on that full savings. Part of what worries me and worries the accounting department is, even if we do get the grant, if we just spend all that money, it's just going to be that much harder to backfill that appropriation when the grant does ultimately end. And the grant is going to be staggered. So I think this upcoming year is our last year of 100%, assuming we get it. Then it's going to stagger down ultimately over the next few years to be zero. So I am kind of capturing $41,855 of savings associated with a grant that we expect to get for regional dispatch, but leaving the rest of that funding in the budget. We have included a new lieutenant in the police department. This was a top priority of Police Chief Llewellyn. And this is 100% related to the new requirements from the new state law, the new post commission that's coming out for officer certification and standards and training. There's a tremendous amount of new work that is going to have to be done in the department, as well as all police departments across the Commonwealth to comply with that. So this was Chief Llewellyn's #1 priority. In the fire department, I'm proposing to add 2 new firefighters. This has been Fire Chief Duffy's #1 priority since day one that I've been here. He's explained to me the importance of how we have, 2 groups of 7 and 2 groups of 6, and those 2 groups of 6, not only is it not effective, it's not ideal. And it's really going to be safer, both for the firefighters in our department, as well as for the residents that they're protecting, to get all 4 groups up to that same sort of minimum manpower. The town accountant has been talking for a couple of years about how our snow and ice budget is, woefully under budget. We go through our initial appropriation, with the first inch of snow, essentially. Ultimately, we're allowed to deficit spend it, and we have to pay all our bills in the end, and we end up just funding all of that out of free cash. So moving up toward a little bit more appropriate level of funding snow and ice will just help us not be so reliant on free cash, and will free up free cash for other needed articles. The next 2 items have been top priorities for Dave Taylor, also really since I've been here. He talks about MS4 and all the stormwater and drainage. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and there's just not adequate funding. He ends up having to pull money away from road repair and other things to be able to cover it. So we're trying to move toward more appropriately budgeting for drainage repair. And then also, due to the, again, increasing requirements from both the state and the feds on how we monitor and how we document and how we prove compliance with our stormwater plan, what Dave is proposing is to have a full-time staff person that would be a little bit of in the field, doing inspections, monitoring improvements, and then going back and doing all the paperwork and all the compliance with the state and the feds. And this ultimately could also save some funding, so we don't have to contract out for some of those services. But again, I'm not capturing that savings here. In the Board of Health, they've asked for, as you can see, a little under $11,500 for inspections. That's for both food and Title V inspections. And part of what's going on there as well, in some other communities, the Board of Health agent might do that. In those other communities, those agents are not responsible for other things like curbside trash pickup or recycling centers, things like that. So that is purely a workload issue in a department that has 1 full-time agent, 1 part-time administrative person, and 1 full-time administrative person. Next, moving on to streetlight maintenance. This is something, as the board knows, the town took over our streetlights several years ago before I came on board. And there was a one-time article that was used, that was appropriated and used to help make repairs and replacements, but there was no actual operating budget that was created for streetlight maintenance once we took them over and owned them. And that's been a problem. So we're proposing, based on what we've actually expended the last couple of years, a $30,000 budget for that. And that's something that I think residents will directly notice, because when a light goes out or a request for a new light, we'll actually have funding available to make those repairs and improvements. There's a couple of large items in the Recreation Department, formerly the Youth Commission. One of them is there is a full-time administrative person that's been being charged to the Rec Department's revolving fund for a number of years now, but that really doesn't comply with state law. When you're funding positions out of revolving funds, they're not allowed to be full-time positions with benefits. So we're shifting that over from their revolving fund over to the general fund. And then the biggest increase you'll see here is a new Mckinley building facility budget, which is nearly $113,000. And there's really 2 reasons for this request and why we're putting it in here, or I guess 3 reasons. One is we have to keep this building operating and safe until we figure out what our long-term plan is for the community center. The second is right after I came on board and working with the town accountant, it became clear that there were Comcast and Verizon cable TV funds that were getting transferred each year into that, what had been the McKinley revolving fund for facility maintenance. But those cable TV funds can only be used for cable TV related purposes. And initially that was the case at the McKinley building, but those cable TV operations have long since moved. And so those funds really can't be continued to be transferred there. So those funds have been transferred to WRPS, which is under state and federal law where they need to be. So that immediately created a $75,000 deficit for the McKinley facility budget, as well as just the hit they've taken from all their other programs and things due to COVID. And we just need to, find a way, at least temporarily, to keep that building functional and safe until we have a long-term plan in place. So that's why that number is so large and why it's there. Next is a high profile and an important change, which I know the board has been asking about for a while. And that is our current veterans agent is part-time. He works 3 days a week. And so we wanted to see how that was going to go for a bit before we made any other changes. And I should highlight that he's 3 days a week, not because we only want him 3 days a week, but he works 2 days a week at another town. And he's not able to leave that other town and be with us 5 days. So we wanted to see how it worked, and he's done a fantastic job. But again, the volume of work, the number of veterans in Rockland that need assistance, really does warrant and deserve, full-time service 5 days a week. So what we're proposing here is an increase to get us another person that would work those other 2 days a week that the current veterans agent does not work. And it's not an administrative assistant. This would be an assistant veterans agent. So they would be ultimately, fully certified as a veterans agent, but they would be working under the direction of our current agent just those 2 days. And the reason why that dollar amount is so small on this slide is because we had that position funded for a full-time person, and we never reduced that funding when he was only working part-time. So it's only a small increase that we think we'll need from our current appropriation to be able to fund a part-time person, so we'll have complete 5-day coverage. So that was it as far as all of the specific, major increases to the budget that I'm proposing. Getting to free cash, again, Biz talked about this at a prior meeting. I won't go into the details, but it was an exceptionally large number this year, for over $4.5 million, which is really fantastic news. Unusually high due to a lot of factors that she explained before. And I just want to caution folks, don't get used to it. It's not like we're going to get $4.5 million every year. That's for sure. With the use of free cash, some of the things that we've talked about before right off the top is the need to repay our stabilization fund and our OPEB fund, which we all agreed and voters had the trust in us to temporarily use to help balance the budget during COVID, and also to help us temporarily get the funds for the McCarthy Fund. So I'm not going to go through and read all these. If you have them in your packet, you can see them, but we did get a long list of capital requests from different departments. These are all the items that are over $50,000, and you can see the list of departments. And it obviously does include water and sewer. And then this next page shows a number of items that are less than 50,000. And the reason why we have that $50,000 threshold is the ones over 50 need to be on the capital plan, and the ones under 50,000 do not. I put the library workroom repair request on here to show that it was requested. These are repairs in the workroom that were damaged from a water leak. But I said removed on here because we're going to figure out a way to fund that without having to rely on town meeting and free cash. I might be able to use some of my existing town capital project funds to be able to get that job done. So I'm working closely with the library director on that. So this next slide is my recommended use of free cash. Again, I'm not going to go through and read every item. You do have probably a more legible version in your packet. But I just want to highlight a couple of things. One of them is you'll see our current estimate for the snow and ice deficit is $650,000. Again, this gets to the need to more appropriately budget for snow and ice, so we don't have such a big hit. To our free cash. There's also a $50,000 item in here for current FY22 extra technology for the school department. They have a new opportunity. This would match a grant and get with exceptional pricing, some additional technology that really is needed, especially due to COVID. In a recent conversation I had with Jane Hackett, this might potentially be something that could be funded from ARPA. So I have to look and see if that's really possible or not. If it is, this might possibly come off of this list before we finalize the warrant. A couple other highlights you'll see again right at the top: repaying what we took out of OPEB and also fully repaying what we took out of stabilization, both for the budget as well as temporarily borrowing for the McCarthy Farm. Another couple highlights are a couple of very expensive items: the fuel management system at the Highway Department. That's $750,000 right there. And then a fire truck, a pumper, and an ambulance, as well as some police cruisers. And you notice that column on the right, those are amounts that we can take from our marijuana host community agreement funds. So this is, we had an applicant before us tonight looking to put a dispensary in town, and you can see right here on that column on the right, over $600,000 from our current existing 2 marijuana dispensaries are helping us get 2 police cruisers, an ambulance, and a fire truck. So it's financially, that's been really critical. And then there's a number of other kind of more standard items that you'll see on here. You'll see that the highway item for Spring Street, Summer Beach Street intersection improvements, that's $200,000. The initial request from the highway superintendent was, I think, $600,000. We couldn't afford that, so we're phasing that in over 3 years. I'm happy to talk, about more of these items if you'd like, and we certainly have more time on that. But you'll see as you get to the bottom line, this essentially programs out the full $4.5 million that we have in free cash. Again, contractual buyouts, snow and ice, standing up to our commitment to repay all those one-time funds from OPEB and stabilization, and still holding back $500,000. That's what's labeled as the accountant's holdback, holding back $500,000 for unforeseen expenses. It's never good to literally spend every penny of our free cash, but this does show it being balanced. So my next steps will be to continue evaluating our receipts, continue evaluating the revenues and our assessments coming from the state, follow the state budget process. Obviously, the governor's budget is out, so we'll be looking next for the House and the Senate and Conference Committee, then to see where the final budget shakes out. Generally, in my opinion, I know it's not always the case, but often we do better after the governor's budget. We generally don't do worse, although that's not guaranteed. So again, just showing kind of where we're at. Continue refining our numbers. I've been having a lot of conversations with the school department. We have excellent communications. We are on the same page with them. We'll keep working with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee. Ideally, I'd love to have the final budget approved on March 15th. We could go as late as that first meeting in April if we had to, but that would be the absolute drop dead date when we would sign things and be done. And I know that's a lot of information, and again, a lot of increases and additions that we've not proposed in the past, but I hope that's helpful. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, there's pretty thorough. That was good. A lot of things taken off. I think the list that we've kind of been working on over the last few years. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about the budget presentation?
Great job. That's what I got to say.
Okay, so
yeah, just very thorough and nice presentation. I know you and the finance team and the FinCom work very, very hard on this, along with the capital plan. So appreciate the detail.
And it was nice to see the positions that you've been hoping to achieve for the town hall that you have stated a number of times, such as the part-time HR coordinator and the town planner. how helpful that could be to your team and to town hall and to future progress. So I'm glad to see that in there.
Stephanie,
I
you
got one
just,
comment.
oh, sorry.
No, sorry, the one comment I had, we have one more to go. Facilities director.
And now you just read my mind, Rich. I want to speak to that and something else, because that was not forgotten. The first thing, and I'll come back to that. The first thing is there were a lot of other positions that were requested, which were just, we just simply can't fund everything. So I think I had to cut something like $600,000 or $700,000 from the requests, that department heads had. And that included, additional positions in highway and parks, additional positions in police and fire. So there were a lot of other ones, and facilities. So I want to be careful with what I say kind of publicly now, but I guess I just want to say that was not an oversight, the lack of a facilities director in here. But I think I have had some recent conversations with other departments, and I think there can be some economies of scale and some efficiencies that would make this a much better option. And I want to take more time to flesh that out potentially for next year's budget, rather than just dumping money in something now that might not be needed. So I hope you understand what I'm saying.
So I got a couple of comments. Like one, I think when you present the increase in the budget, I think you present it in a manner where you say the 11%, but I think you also want to say, take out the things that are just being put back in from COVID, things that were cut from COVID, because I think that actually tells a better story, because obviously, it's monies that were there before that was approved by town meeting in the past. And I think it takes away some of the sticker shock of the 11%. Two, I'm fully supportive of the town planner position. We ran into a situation where, we had two meetings that were running at the same time, and both of them had a similar agenda item with similar abutters, with the same abutters, and it was brought to my attention prior to the meeting getting started. And fortunately for us, we were able to get out of that meeting because one of the presenters wasn't able to attend. But I think having somebody in that position, they have more. Most of the people that are working on those boards and committees, are actually all of the people that are working on those boards and committees, have other full-time jobs. So having somebody in that position to be that next checks and balances between agendas, between zoning and planning or conservation, I think is important. So that's something that we've been looking for a while. I think it makes great sense. Thank you for refilling the veterans budget, or adding to and looking to hire somebody that is actually a veterans agent. That's been a promise that I made to the veterans when it got cut before COVID, and when we were able to get Tim on board, that we would get that back up to a full-time position. So thank you for that. And then, I think we talk about next steps, and I think we've heard it loud and clear that the residents require some more communication from us. And I think one of the things, Doug, you and I talked about it briefly, I want to put it out there that before we send the warrant to print, that you and I possibly do a presentation, a public information session, and we'll go through the entire warrant. And if anybody has any questions or concerns or thinks that something should be written differently, then we'll entertain those suggestions that night. And then I also want to do a dress rehearsal town meeting this year, where we go through the entire warrant at the auditorium. And it just, people have questions, nothing will be voted upon that night, but we'll go through it. We'll be there. We can go through the entire warrant. And that way, if somebody does have a question, we have an opportunity to get them an answer before we go live for the actual town meeting and put it out there for people to vote on. We saw obviously what happened at the last special town meeting that we had, or the last town meeting that we had, where the residents required more information.
I think Mike froze for me. Is he frozen for you?
Yeah,
I froze.
Okay.
my time was up.
That's it.
Yeah, you guys are out. You guys are lucky. Yeah.
You froze up right where you talked about how at the last annual town meeting, the voters required more information.
He's frozen again.
Frozen again. All
What a
right.
face.
Maybe I'll just,
There he is. He's back.
Are you guys with me? Because I was the only one talking. You guys all froze.
No, you're frozen again. You're the only one.
Yeah.
Mike, one thing that might help, Mike, if you can hear me, is if you turn your video off, that might free up a little bandwidth on your Wi-Fi.
Hi, Mike.
You guys got me?
We can
Yeah.
hear you now.
All right. So that was great. Yeah. So yeah, you two yuck it up, enjoy it. But it's the level of communication that I think the residents expect, but I think they also deserve. So, we'll do our best to get it out there. Otherwise, I think the budget presentation was perfect, and if you need any help with finance or capital planning, feel free to reach out to any of us to help you out with that.
Thanks, Mike. I think one of the questions I had for you is, and not you personally, but you, the board, just as if there was anything that I highlighted that you just simply didn't agree with, or you're like, that's not a priority, we shouldn't be investing in that. And I don't think there is, because this was a team effort on our part, and we put a lot of thought into it, but I just wanted to make sure, I always run things by the selectmen first before I, present it to the finance committee. So I just wanted to make sure there was really nothing in here that was of concern to you. Obviously, that doesn't lock you into anything. This is going to be an iterative process, for the next month. But I just wanted to make sure that, you didn't think I was going off the rails in any particular avenue. But it doesn't sound like it, so sounds like I'm okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. All right. And I should also highlight that a lot of little numbers are changing, so I'm not going to keep every single time a number or two changes, I'm not going to give you a whole new budget spreadsheet. I'm just going to kind of highlight the significant things that change, and then we'll lock it down in a month. Great. So that's really all I had for now on the budget. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, let me just get back to the top of this agenda here. Next on the agenda, we already did other old business, town administrator's report and correspondence. Doug.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Whoops, you know what? I actually didn't mean to share my screen. I was just going to use my own notes. Here we go. I just wanted to, again, thank Serena in particular for really stepping up to help me during this interim period when the town accountant is out. I get a lot of help from all the financial department heads and Jen and the HR director, but I really want to give Serena a shout out and thank her. Also want to thank Jen for drafting the annual town report on behalf of me and the board. I know you reviewed that, Mike, and you're good with it. So that's going to be off to the printer shortly. As it relates to the McCarthy farm, I did want to highlight that, as I mentioned before, that there's a lot of steps that we still have to go through before we can actually get the $400,000 check, reimbursement check from the state. And one of the major ones, one of the really more complicated ones, was getting a draft detailed conservation restriction submitted to the appropriate agencies at the state for their review. And that deadline was like just the other day. And so I've been working with town council, and with them, we have to have some external nonprofit entity that's willing to, quote unquote, hold the restriction on behalf of the town. So that's the Wildlands Trust. So we've been working with Scott McFadden from the Wildlands Trust, and we had that, we've had site visits, and it's been a lot of work, but he and Attorney Galvin have an excellent draft of that. We are on target, meeting all the deadlines that we have to do to get our reimbursement from the state. But this was a really significant milestone, and they may have some little minor tweaks to it, but I don't think there'll be anything major. This may have been mentioned before. It could have been Rich Penny that may have mentioned it, but I'll say it again, as we just had a school building project meeting. I want to thank the Parks Department for helping out on the school building project when they were, I think it was window testing they had to do recently, and they needed to get access to water. Peter Ewell and other Parks Department guys, in the words of our owner's project manager, went above and beyond to try to help find a solution to the problem and get them what they needed to get the testing done, to get the windows put in. So I want to thank Peter and the rest of the Parks Department for that. Also related to the school building project, we had a small team meeting after the public meeting today, because we are exploring potential, and I just really stress the word potential, rooftop solar for the new elementary school. That would not be part of the MSBA project. It's not part of the MSBA project, but the building committee did have the foresight to make sure that the structure was designed to be able to accommodate solar if that was something the town wanted to do in the future. So it's a complicated endeavor, but it's something that we're just beginning to look at. So I just thought I'd give you all a heads up about that. 3 more quick items. One is I did complete my, it's referred to as MCPPO, the Massachusetts Certified Public Procurement Official recertification. So I've been a certified procurement officer by the State Inspector General's office for probably close to 10 years now. And every 3 years you have to be recertified, and there's a whole bunch of classes and tests and all that. So I just completed that. Thought you should know. Next, the town accountant job posting. We did just post that with the MMA's Beacon publication, as well as kind of extensively pushing it out to other avenues where potential town accountants might be looking. So we did just push that job out, and hopefully we'll get some good qualified applicants. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we had a very successful drive-through distribution at the high school, middle school on Saturday the 12th for our COVID-19 test kits that we got from the county. And we weren't really sure how many we would go through. So we made sure to limit it to 1 per household, because we wanted to make sure every household had an opportunity to get them. The fire department, police department, and the community emergency response team volunteers, those are, residents, town employees that, volunteered to operate this thing. It went flawlessly. We even had lucky weather. It was perfect. And we're fortunate enough where everybody that asked for a test kit got a test kit, but we still have a very large supply still available. So we have taken those test kits. We have them available for the public, for Rockland residents for free, located in the town administrator and board of selectmen's office, as well as the board of health. Both of those offices are at Rockland Town Hall. Normal business hours, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday, and the first and third Tuesday of the month until 8 p.m. Also, we have them located at the Senior Center and at the McKinley Community Center. And for all the locations, they're for residents only. You have to show a proof of ID, a license, or other type of government ID, lease, or utility bill. And we're limiting it to two kits per household, but it's per week. So again, we're just trying to make sure everyone that needs one and wants one has an opportunity to get a test. And that's going to be first come, first serve, until further notice. So I just want to make sure the community is aware of that. We also pushed it out on Facebook, the website, and we've sent it out to the media outlets. So we're pleased about that. And again, all these test kits were purchased by Plymouth County using the remaining CARES Act funding they had before the expiration of the funding with the federal government. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to, just before we move on, I just want to, talk about the test kits for a second. I'm not against, stockpiling these kits and just making sure that we stick to the guidelines and give them out based on need and request. Not overly concerned, but a slight concern with just the amount of departments that have it, and just make sure that they all understand that it's Rockland residents only, what the exact guidelines are, and it doesn't go out to, this person, works in the town, and, they can get them from their town, and not to be harsh, but these are, provided for the residents of the town. And I don't want it to be any kind of issue like the last time that we had kits available. So just as long as everybody knows, we're not in a rush to get rid of them, because, heck, COVID could be back again next year, right? So
I'm glad you brought that up. I have 2 points to make on that. The first, I forgot to mention, we also gave another supply to the Rockland Housing Authority. So we gave them a large supply directly from them for their residents. But speaking to your point, part of why we're having it in the 4 different departments, 2 different departments at Town Hall, because both of the departments that I mentioned, health and my office, are very short-staffed. So there's times when the office is closed. We also wanted to be convenient for residents. Folks that go to the senior center might not need to come to Town Hall, or a lot of people go to the community center and don't need to come here. But I have everything that I've explained, the residency requirement, the documentation of it, as well as our documentation of listing every single person that we give a test kit to. That is all documented. I have that in writing. Everybody knows it, that will not be an issue. So I think we're in good shape.
Perfect. It's just, it's important to me just that the residents know that we are tracking it and that there are systems in place that can account for every kit, so that they know that it's not just going to friends and relatives and stuff like that, as has been put out there in the past. So
These are for Rockland residents only, free of charge. Yeah.
exactly. Perfect. Thank you, Doug. Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen, and the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectman Penny.
I do not have any tonight.
Thank you, Rich. Selectman Needham.
I would just like to send a shout out to the Rockland Youth Commission. This past weekend, they entertained hundreds of kids from Rockland and also other towns in their Nerf Wars capture the flag at the McKinley Center. I was able to witness it, and a lot of kids had a lot of fun. So kudos to Jean Blaney and her team. They do a phenomenal job time and time again for our kids. And I just can't say enough good things about them. So thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Selectman Ryan.
One note, the passing of Robert Lewis, was 102 years old. He was an old Rockland guy, but I was friends with his son, Dickie and Bobby, in the glory days of the years gone by. And the only reason I'm going to mention it is because he was the founder of Rockland Garden Center. And since I know somebody who works at the Rockland Garden Center these days, I thought you might be interested in a little historical where it came from. I'm not sure you knew that, but the Lewis family was friends, and I don't know where they all are now. It's been a long time since I've seen any of them, and they're probably all gone because we're all those guys now, but so be it. Anyway,
Thank
that's
you,
all.
Larry. Thank you, Larry. Vice Chairman Nyman.
I don't have any additional comments tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everyone. Just a couple things. Today is February 15th. Last day to take out papers for this upcoming election is February 17th. You can get the papers in the town clerk's office. It just requires 50 signatures of Rockland registered voters to be turned back in by February 22nd, actually 23rd, I believe, because of the holiday on Monday. So it was the holiday. The holiday might have been 21st and we moved it to 22nd.
Close enough.
Yeah, I think I was right the first time. Close enough. The date. The date. You got
The last day is the 22nd.
All right, the last day is the 22nd. And then I also just want to, I want to congratulate, I guess now former Sergeant Brian Coakley, on being promoted to lieutenant. He's been with the force for 26 years. He started out as a dispatcher, and he's been the dare officer in town for a number of years, and it's a big step for Brian and his family, and Rockland is lucky to have him in that position. So congratulations to Lieutenant Coakley. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
To adjourn.
I got a motion to adjourn. Larry, is that motion coming from Arizona? Is that where you are?
No, I'm actually in Kansas City. I was on my way to Cincinnati to go to the Super Bowl parade, but unfortunately, they got waylaid in the last couple of minutes of the game. So
yeah,
and LA was too mad. It was a madhouse out that way.
There you go. All right, so I got a motion.
A second.
And I got a second from Rich. All those in favor, Selectman Needham,
Yes.
Selectman Penny,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
and myself. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Everybody.
See you later.